we may have to pause all that to hear from Gaza over in Lebanon. So really, really pleased to introduce our next speaker. Taj Ali is a journalist, he's an author, he's somebody that I've met through being an activist, and really pleased that you could be here to address us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to start by just congratulating the Stop the War Coalition for organising this meeting and for playing such a pivotal role in organising the mass movement that has organised so much over the past year or so. I mean, we have seen a mass movement develop in response to some of the worst injustice that I have ever seen in my life, and it was the Palestinian struggle that politicised me. I remember the story of 4 children playing football on a beach being killed, and really trying to grapple with how anyone could allow this to happen, how governments, how journalists, how ordinary people of conscience could see these images and videos and not do anything about it. And it was that event, seeing that and learning more about the Palestinian struggle, the Nakba of 1948, where we saw 750,000 Palestinians expelled from their homeland, 500 villages destroyed, learning about the ethnic cleansing and knowing that the Palestinian people have been displaced on so many occasions. Now, we know that the Palestinian struggle is not confined to Gaza. We know that in the West Bank they are subjected to military rule, they are subjected to humiliating checkpoints. In Israel, the 20% who are Palestinian are subjected to over 65 discriminatory laws. And so Israel is really trying to destroy the morale of the Palestinian people. But let me tell you something, the Palestinian people have been fighting for so long and they will continue fighting. And we are making just a small sacrifice by attending things like this, by marching on protests. The struggle of the Palestinian people, a lack of food, a lack of water, and a lack of electricity. When you think about a 14-year-old child, 5 successive bombing campaigns, what does that do to you psychologically? And they are still fighting for their homeland. And so I think it's very, very important that we challenge the narratives that try to silence Palestinian solidarity. You know, the charge of anti-Semitism. There is nothing about standing up for Palestinian rights that is mutually exclusive with tackling any form of racism. It is precisely because we are anti-racist that we stand with the Palestinian people. It is precisely because we are anti-racist that we stand against settler colonialism, that we stand against apartheid, that we stand against the racial subjugation of a group of people. Now, when you think about Trump, we know what is coming. We know that he is going to give free rein to Netanyahu, and we need to be prepared for that. We need to be prepared for a world of uncertainty. We also know that Keir Starmer is not a friend of this movement. His disgraceful, deplorable comments justifying the collective punishment of the Palestinian people, his disgraceful, deplorable comments refusing to acknowledge what we all know is a genocide. This man is a human rights lawyer, and it would just be my 7-year-old cousin who would be able to tell me what they see as a genocide. It's an absolute disgrace what we have seen. But our movement is capable of fighting back, and the biggest rebellion under Keir Starmer actually happened when we had that vote for a ceasefire. And that rebellion happened not because MPs decided that it was the right thing to back a ceasefire, but because our communities organised. We had open letters. I come from Luton, our faith communities, our trade unionists, we came together and we signed an open letter. Both of our MPs were on the front bench, and they were forced to step down and vote for a ceasefire because we said very simply, no ceasefire, no vote. And that is what we are going to continue demanding. But also, in the Labour movement, we have to make absolutely clear that Palestine is a red line. If you refuse to back a full and immediate arms embargo, you will not get the support of our communities. And we have demonstrated in the general election that we are capable of shifting the dial, that we can elect alternatives. Many constituencies in Britain, from Bethnal Green to Bradford West, have now become marginal constituencies. There used to be this notion that you have to tack to the centre, you have to appeal to Middle England to win general elections. The new marginals are in our diverse working class communities where our movement is the strongest, and we need to use that leverage to demand of our MPs that you do not be complacent on the Palestinian struggle. It's absolutely important that we organise in our local communities and we keep the pressure on, because already I am seeing complacency from some Labour MPs who just before the election said that they will speak up for the Palestinian people. The election might be however many years away, but we have to continually demand that they speak up. And when they see hundreds of people marching, thousands marching, when they see hundreds and thousands signing petitions and open letters saying that this is a red line for our communities, they will take notice. And so we have to remember that. When we think back to the struggle against apartheid South Africa, our Western governments didn't suddenly decide that the people of South Africa deserved freedom. It was people in our communities organising against apartheid, trade unionists standing up with people calling for the boycott and divestment and sanctions, putting pressure on politicians. And I want to address the trade union movement as well, because though we have had significant solidarity from many trade unions, there seems to be a reluctance to acknowledge that we do not have to have an economy based on the arms trade, that we can have jobs in this country based on productive use. And when trade unionists say that taking on the arms industry is a threat to jobs and livelihoods, as a historian I know that there were people in the trade union movement who said taking on empire was a threat to the white working class. Nobody takes that position today, and so trade unionists have to stand in solidarity with the Palestinian trade unionists who have explicitly called for boycott, divestment and sanctions, because we can articulate an alternative vision for the economy where jobs are based on production and support for our communities, not the destruction of other people's homeland, not the killing of civilians in Yemen and Palestine. If we can understand that we can replace jobs in gas and oil with green jobs, and we can understand that we can have a just transition from weapons of war to production and manufacturing and industry that supports the British people and is not complacent in the genocide of people around the world. So it's very, very important that we articulate these arguments and we think about what kind of economy that we want in Britain today. The final point I want to address is the link between what is happening internationally and what is happening here at home. Over the summer, we saw racist violence targeted against Black and Asian communities. We saw an increase in Islamophobia. People talked about misinformation, the far right. They certainly had a role to play. But this was years in the making, and it is very much linked to the war on terror. Islamophobia functions as a tool of our political class. And those involved in the Stop the War Coalition will remember the amount of Islamophobia that was used to justify the Iraq War, draconian counter-terrorism legislation in Britain. We had Suella Braverman talking about hate marches on the streets. We had Labour MPs talking about intimidation and aggression from people who simply wanted to hold them to account. We had Nigel Farage on television talking about how British Muslims don't share British values. Lee, whatever his name is, Anderson, the reformed far-right MP, talking about how Sadiq Khan was controlled by Islamists because of the mass movement marching in solidarity with Palestine. So it is connected. What is happening in Palestine, the movement against it, and the Islamophobia used to shut down our movement, it's all connected. And that's why it's very, very important that we connect the struggles. I want to finish on something a bit more optimistic. I have seen the politicization of young people in our communities. I have seen people fighting back against the racism of the far right and what they are seeing in Palestine. There is a new generation who are assertive, who are unapologetically anti-imperialist and anti-racist, and they are the future for our movement. So there is hope on the horizon, and we need to make sure that we provide leadership and guidance and support for those young people, like those at my local sixth form college who took on the arms manufacturers recruiting on campus. I am so proud of our communities for standing up against this injustice. I'm going to take all of our efforts together